Welcome everybody to another episode of the Believers Club, and you're not losing your eyesight. We are back on Zoom this week, and we wanted to share a topic with you on embracing change. How do you embrace change, and are you even embracing it? We wanted to talk to you about this today because we did do an episode a little while back on stepping outside of your comfort zone. And we realized that once you step out of your comfort zone, that ignites a lot of change. So now
Yeah.
what?
And change is scary. Like that's what we're told. And that's kind of what we feel when we go through changes. May that be, a relationship change, your body changing, your mental state changing. It's a lot to take in and like adjusting to those changes. How do you embrace that? And I feel like it's literally a process, like a lot of other things. It takes time and practice and acceptance of that change to really embrace it in a good way. But
Mhm.
I think you go through those like negative state
Yeah,
your mind before you get to that embracing or just accepting your changes or other people's changes in your life.
totally. And sometimes it's like COVID was a big change for all of that, for all of us. And the
Big
change can
change.
be so external sometimes, and you're like, fuck, like I wasn't prepared for this, or I didn't
Yeah.
want to deal with this. But lo and behold, like change is always going to happen. And if you're bold enough to step outside of your comfort zone, then you're going to have some bold changes that you're going to have to make in your life to make room for the new things that you're doing, the new people in your life, the new habits, the new success. You have to make
Yeah.
room for it. And so
Yeah.
you gotta step into that, into, out of your comfort zone, but you gotta make room for what's about to come. And that requires change, making changes.
Yeah.
um,
For sure.
I wanted to share with you a couple of ways in which have really helped me to embrace change and become more of yourself, because let's face it, being open to change does not, what we're trying to say here is not changing who you are, but
Mhm.
becoming more of who you are. That's the
Yeah.
difference, right? Because if you've stepped outside of your comfort zone and you are now ready to live a different or new life, then it's going to require you to actually unpeel the layers and become more of yourself, and and live more authentically. So, a couple of things that really struck home for me anytime I made a big decision in my life, or I had to deal with changes, was remembering that it was inevitable and it's normal to feel the awkwardness, to feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable in change, and then naming and acknowledging the changes that I'm experiencing. Because sometimes it can be one or two things. So we think our whole world has changed and we become melodramatic about it. But really start to list out what exactly in your life is changing, because that can help you relieve a lot of anxiety, right?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and the third thing that was a really big thing for me was separating myself from the experience. So not getting super, super caught up in the emotions of change, and just
Mhm.
allowing it to happen and stepping back and just witnessing it, and just
Yeah.
noticing it and accepting it, and then doing whatever it is that I had to do. But when you become so emotionally involved in your changes,
The
you can
pressure,
yeah, you can
the
feel
pressure you put
pressure.
on it.
Yeah, and you can tend to feel really lost.
Yeah.
So, for example, when COVID happened, I that was a huge change for everybody, right? That was like a
Mhm.
worldwide, it was the first time in the world that I think we really felt something collectively and all together. But I remember everybody was really stressed out. And I was too, but I was more so in a state of shock of like, what the fuck is happening? And
Mhm.
I remembered though that it was really important for me to take a step back and not be so a part of it, just to remember to be whole myself and witness it. And as things were changing, to just be adaptable.
Yeah. You know what? For me, I was kind of, yeah, when 20, like, yeah, COVID was a change that none of us prepared for. It was a change. It wasn't like a change we were making in our life. It wasn't a lifestyle change. It was a worldly change that we all weren't prepared for. And it really tested all of us. It tested how we handle change. How do we handle things that are out of your control? And I'll tell you, the first 2 months, obviously, it was like panic mode in a sense, because you just don't know what it is that we're dealing with. And I I definitely wasn't like a calm and collective change in those first month and a half to 2 months. But as time went, I it really came down on me like, what am I doing to make the most out of this change that's happening around me? Am
Hmm.
I sitting at home and like just doing the bare minimum? Or am I taking more control over what's happening and actually doing something with it? And as soon as I went through that kind of shift in my mind, I started putting in so much more work, even though it was quarantine mode and you had to, double check everything and triple check and make sure everyone was on the same page. It was probably the one time I got so creatively open and just really tested myself and how I was handling that change.
Hmm.
And yeah, the first couple months it was hard because I didn't know how to handle it. And I think everyone kind of was in that same boat. But that fourth month was like a tester of how do you handle change? Because first 2 months I was just like everybody else, kind of lost.
Yeah, you really learn a lot about yourself when you kind of surrender to the experience, right? And you're like, all right, fuck
Yeah.
it. Like, I'm here now. We're here now. Like, this is what's got to roll. And I
Yeah.
remember when COVID first hit, I had a job opportunity that I lost, right? And they canceled I was getting hired in a new position and it was canceled due to COVID. And I was like, all right, I got to pivot. I did
Yeah.
have a financial business that I was starting to work on, but I was like, I'm going to work full time. And that full time job got taken. I was like, all right, I have no other option but to just like give this my all. And I
Yeah.
remember right when that happened, so I lost the job, and then my mom got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and I thought I was going to lose my mom too. And it was probably
Change after change.
it was like financial change, but then it was like life or death change. Like I'm about to lose
Yeah.
a family member who just a month ago, like we were in a trip on to Mexico to celebrate her 60th birthday and being healthy and all these things. And then boom, within a month, our whole world switched.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we had to pivot, pivot, pivot. And I have to say that this year has having a parent that is sick, critically sick with something like stage 4 breast cancer while you're in quarantine in a pandemic is probably been the biggest test of my life because
Mhm.
I didn't have work to go to distract me from the issues. I didn't have I mean, we can't go anywhere. We can't do anything except be at home and live with the issues that are in front of us and then try to make the most of it. That is a
Yeah, you can't
fucking
escape it.
tall order. You can't you
Yeah.
especially when you're going through what I would say was the hardest time of my life and I can't see my friends and I can't be around people. It's catastrophic, but at the same time, I had to remember that these changes are out of my control. And you may be feeling this way too, and or not, and maybe this is a way for you to start feeling about it, is that some of these things that are happening are outside of you and are out of your control, and the best thing that you can do is to just label it, list it, and then just allow it to be and do the
Yeah.
best that you can to stay as whole and to be as creative and to just ride through it because you have to, right?
Yeah, you have no choice, yeah.
Yeah.
Even the Believers Club, like we've talked about it before, the plans were we were going to be like a actual audio podcast on different
Yeah.
platforms. And the fact that the facility closed down where we would record, we had to pivot on top of a pandemic already happening.
Yeah.
Everything was shut down. We were literally releasing that week, like we were just planning
Yes.
our last minute things, and
Our editor was working with us. Like we were ready to go.
yeah, and that's it. It was like a dead stop. And right there, we could have gone two different directions. We could have gone direction of kind of just stopping and not just kind of letting it not go anywhere until life was back to normal, which we don't even know any now when the new normal will be. Um, or that we had to pivot and we had to come up with, okay, if this isn't going according to how we planned it, how can we make it still work? How can we make it work? Because it actually, like, they also, like Hart said, you couldn't see people, so it was actually a great way for us to just get together over Zoom, over video, and that was our choice. And I feel like that we're sitting here today 37, 38 episodes deep because we chose to choose the path of continuing however we could, even if it didn't go according to what we originally planned. So
Yeah.
sometimes you kind of have to let go of what you want things to be, and you need to embrace and work with what's given to you or presented to you. And I feel like that is a test of how you will embrace change.
100%. And you know what is so fun to do is when you embrace change and you have been resilient through it and you've grown from it, you have to celebrate that. You have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
celebrate your growth. And this is something that a lot of us forget to do. I forget to do sometimes too.
same.
And I have to
Yeah,
remind myself, it's like if if we're growing and we're doing great things and we're pushing through no matter how small that growth is, if we're not celebrating it, then what are we doing it for?
yeah,
Like
yeah, exactly.
like you have to remember that if you've accomplished something, make it a point to celebrate that accomplishment and that growth because you've had to go through change, you've had to be resilient, you've had to do a lot of things to get there. And when you celebrate your growth, that's what gets you going to do it again and again and again, right?
Yeah,
So
we
I
can
just
be,
wanted to point that out.
yeah, because we can be really hard on ourselves. You're right. Like, even however small it was, like Hart said, it doesn't matter. Growth comes in so many different digits. You know what I mean? It comes in ones, it comes in twos. So we had to work with the one and make it our 100. And again, we wouldn't be sitting here if we had decided, okay, you know what, let's just like wait another 6 months to see where things are going to be. We had no idea in April, May what things were going to be. And we said, you know what, let's embrace it. Let's do this. We pivoted. We chose different ways to get around it and made it work.
Yeah, absolutely. And like focus on when you're going through the growth and the changes, focus on your resiliency. Focus on how strong you are. And sometimes what helps is remembering a time in the past when you've had to be resilient and you've had to go through change and remember that you did that successfully and so you can do it again. Because
Be,
anytime I
be your own example. Yeah.
be your own example and use yourself as your past experiences as a motivator because um, what really helps me sometimes is when I'm struggling with something, I think back to a time where I was struggling with this before and I made it through. And
Yeah.
it just reminds me that like you're gonna be good. So all the changes we've been through this year, I keep a tab of this and I imprint this and I remember that anytime something happens now in the future, I got it. I got it. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to be able
Yeah.
to do it. And the biggest part of doing that is being able to ask for help. I asked for help.
Yeah.
I think when my mom was diagnosed, that's probably the biggest lesson that I learned was understanding how to ask for help and understanding how to accept help. I think is more like it. People
Yeah.
offer support and help, and my parents were more like, no, 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 like don't accept anything from anybody, da da da. And I was like, yeah, but we're burning out here. And so when people were dropping off meals or spending time, it really just, I was like, I'm going to accept it. I'm going to accept it because this is a big change that we're going through. And the only way we're going to get through this change is by accepting help from other people.
And that's probably the best thing you could have done. Because you know what? I think accepting help or like handing out help, it comes with the word shame. Like there's some type of shame
Right.
to
Shame.
if if you need to ask for help, or if you need to if somebody's approaching you. Personally, same, like I remember when I started Face Your Mirage, I kind of, as much as I was expecting support and love, I wasn't communicative of the help that I really truly wanted, because there was that shame of like, no, I should be able to do it myself. And I feel like the biggest change you could develop out of that is like, you're never going to do things by yourself in life. You are always going to need help in whatever way it is. And I feel like instead of looking at it as a shame, help is like a truly a blessing.
100.
And that will only the more we talk about it, the more we share that, yes, you go through that shame when you want to ask for help. The more we kind of put that out in the front, the more we will realize like, no, it's truly a blessing. Because again, back to, we're supposed to be community. We're community people. We're human beings. We
Yeah.
thrive off of each other's energy and helping each other, may that be feeding or anything. So yeah, I feel like that shame needs to go
Die.
away from even the change. Like sometimes you don't want to embrace change because you feel like if you change your ways of doing something that you've done a certain way for many years or whatever, your whole life.
Yeah.
But if that change is bringing a positive thing, there shouldn't be any shame connected to that. It should be a blessing that you're making that choice, or you're even thinking on the path to like, okay, maybe I don't want to do this the way I've been always doing it.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes
Okay.
our shame and accepting change and diving into it comes from what other people's thoughts or opinions will be on these changes. And
Yes.
I'm talking about like the smallest change from, I don't know, changing
Eating
the
habits.
color of your room, right?
Yes.
Your
Yes.
office, to making a change in your life that may not feel like a change to you, but it's a change for everybody else. Let's go as far as
Yeah.
saying, let's say somebody is struggling with their sexuality, right?
Yeah.
We know that if you're coming out, you're not making a change because you were born the way that you're born, but to the world, they'll now see you differently or see you as um, your sexuality. And that sometimes,
Yeah.
I think, from people that I've spoken to, stops them from coming out and being who it is that they really are, because they're afraid of the world around them changing, people
Because of,
seeing them differently, you know.
yeah, because of literally back to that word shame, because change comes with some sort of shame, and it really shouldn't. Because if you're changing for the better, there's obviously, you can change and become a bad person or whatever depending on what you do. But if you're literally trying to evolve, what we talked about last week,
Mhm.
you're wanting to embrace the new you, and that doesn't mean completely changing your characteristics, your
No,
personality traits. It's like Hard said, you are embracing the evolution of you, and that may be that
there you
you
go.
need to get rid of certain people that aren't beneficial to you. So to those people, that change is going to feel like an attack. And that's okay, because as long as you're making that change because mentally and emotionally and physically that is a healthy change for you,
Mhm.
that's all you need to worry about. The change is for you, firstly. It's for you. It's to better you. It's not to better someone else's mood towards you.
Ex- Exactly. We do it whether we're in a relationship with someone. I made a post yesterday on my personal Instagram, talking about how for so many years of my life I chased perfection, and it was this idea that like I was chasing perfection in this like ideal way of looking and being and living and all these things, career paths. because that was the expectation that society has had. And I continuously chased relationships that were constantly asking me to be perfect, and I was never meeting that standard. And so
Mm-hmm.
I left those relationships, but I realized that I still had that within myself and with the world around me. I still had this relationship with the world where I felt like I needed to be perfect before I could participate. And
Yeah.
it's the most fucked up stuff, because um, stopping that mindset requires a lot of change. And when you change, you have to get really raw and honest about who you are. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the world can change, your life can change. The thing that you're going to need to rely on time and time again to keep you stable is your identity of self,
Yeah.
who you
Yeah.
are, what you
And you
believe
being
yourself
okay
to
with
be.
yourself.
Yeah, and the love for yourself. Because
Yeah.
it was like a big slap in the face when I realized, like, hold on a second, the way I was living it all kind of crashed and burned in 1 year. And I had to really get honest about what are my expectations
Mm-hmm.
in life. Like, do I even want any of this? No. So I had to pivot and change my entire perspective to be more of who I was, and to be okay with it, and to love it. And now I can't stop learning about myself, because I change is something that has always been a good thing, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's because of the perspective I had on change. Change is always a good thing if you believe that you can come out better from it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It doesn't always
That's
have,
like when
it can feel like a catastrophe, but it doesn't have to result in one.
yeah. And sometimes it helps when we know a little bit of the end result, because then it pushes us to go towards it more, because you know that it's going to be a positive outcome.
Yeah,
So yeah, I know, I totally agree with that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
Mm,
if you're changing and you're growing and it's uncomfortable, you're on the right track. And one thing I do want to share
yeah.
is that it's kind of changed my perspective on why we're so afraid of growth and change. And I don't know why I'm doing this, but the biggest thing is that in our as our primal brain, right, how we are and how our brain functions from time ago, back in history, right, when we weren't living in civilization like we are today. If something was changing, it was dangerous for us, because we may not have had the resources and things to be able to adapt to that change. And change oftentimes for us back in the day meant danger.
Yeah.
And so our brains still, till this day, even though we've evolved so much, our brains are still primal, right? We still haven't evolved all that much in that capacity. So
Yeah.
when we're hit with some sort of change, and now when we're hit with change, it's not a life or death situation, right? Like we're not going to be on the street or anything like that, or be killed by a wild animal. But it still triggers that same part of our brain to think that we're in
Yeah.
danger. That's why we pause, we stop, we analyze, and we go, nope, because it's that fight or flight that still kicks in. And
Yeah.
we have to remember that when change is happening and we feel paralyzed by it and we don't want to shift, it's because that's what's happening in your brain. Your primal
Mhm.
instincts are kicking in, but now we know better and we can take a step back and be honest about what's actually happening and tell yourself, I'm not going to die, I'm safe. These
Yeah.
changes are going to bring about these wonderful things. And I think as time goes on, humans, we will evolve from that, but we still have it. And I think knowing that has helped me to realize, like, okay, this isn't a life or death situation, even though my brain's telling me that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to be okay. Like, I can switch to a different iPhone. I'm not going to die.
Yeah. No, for sure. And just realizing that main thing is that change is good. Sometimes it's going to be for the bad, sometimes it's going to be the good, but I feel like there's a reason why change happens, and it truly comes down to how you end up embracing it,
Mhm.
as in how do you accept it, how do you bring it into your life. Do you end up having a conversation where you're like, okay, I shouldn't have done that, I probably should do this, in a where you're bettering yourself and you end up embracing that? Or do you end up getting stuck in that, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And then you somehow still end up getting stuck in that, I shouldn't have done that, instead of moving on to what the second option you've created for yourself. Because change truly is good because it helps you grow.
It does.
And growth comes through the hardest times. It
Mm,
truly comes through the hardest fucking times. And 2020 was the perfect test for all of us.
yeah.
And some of us went down and had a really rough year. And I think all of us are still going through it, but
Mhm.
some more than others decided to embrace change and make the best of whatever was presented to them. And some people really gave in to the negative side and are still stuck in there, and hopefully they are able to embrace change in the future. But this year was a true test on who's gonna be comfortable embracing change and be able to pivot when things don't go according to how you plan it out.
100%.
And yeah.
100%. And you know what? I realized this topic is so fitting because this year's theme, in my opinion, has been about change. And this is actually the
Yeah,
last episode that's going to
yeah,
air for this year,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. No,
This
that's
episode is going to be coming out and it's going to be the last episode of 2020.
yeah.
That's
This will
crazy.
be going up after Christmas, so hopefully you guys have had a wonderful time with your
Yes.
family,
Merry
celebrating whatever
Christmas.
it is that you celebrate.
Take a
Um,
break, man. Have some
yeah,
laughs, have a glass of wine, like kick back, relax, like allow this year to end and for your faith to be restored and
yeah,
for you to just like get ready for 2021 because it's going to be
and
changing
that new,
again.
the new change that's going to be coming for sure. So
We love
we'll be
y'all.
see you guys in the New Year's, and talk to you guys soon.
Merry Christmas.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.